Hi, it's Miss Lesley from Youth Guidance Mentoring Academy, and today we're going to finish part 2 of the Notebook of Doom, Whack of the P-Rex. So where we left off is chapter 8, and Nikki, Rip, and Alexander are trying to find what monster has been attacking their school. So they are part of the Super Secret Monster Patrol, the SSMP. So far they've had footprints left all around their school, and they've had candy in the footprints, and they're thinking it's to lure the children. So they haven't figured out what monster it is yet. So, chapter 8, Sticky Situation. "Ow, you're home," said Alexander's dad. He was in the front porch, reading the latest issue of Captain Cupsid. "How did everything go with your ant farm?" "Ant farm?" Alexander asked, looking over his shoulder. "Oh, I forgot about that." "Really?" said his dad. "What could have made you forget something so important? I bet your ant farm was a big smash." So he did accidentally drop his ant farm project and it broke. That was something that happened. And because his teacher was a part of their science experiment, they were going to all connect it into a giant ant city. "Oh yeah," said Alexander. "You could say that." His eyes darted to the swaying treetops across the street. Alexander gulped. "Dad, can you go inside now?" "Sure thing, Al," his dad said, "just as soon as you get the paper off your shoe." Alexander blinked. "Not again," he said. He pulled the strip of paper from the bottom of his shoe. This time the paper was bright green, and it covered in sticky purple goo. "This isn't toilet paper," he thought. So this is the third piece of toilet paper that's been stuck to a shoe, or some sort of paper. He touched the goo and it gave it a sniff. Sour grape? Taffy, he thought. More candy. This must be connected to the dino monster. But how? Alexander looked at his sticky purple finger. He gasped. Purple thumbprints. He dashed upstairs to his room and he opened the notebook to the trample hamster pages. Purple thumbprints ran along one side. He sniffed. The page smelled grapey. The next two pages were stuck together by purple taffy. He carefully peeled the pages apart. "Ah!" he shouted. P-Rex. Pinatasaurus Rex. Look at that. The P stands for pinata, like the colorful paper container you burst open at your cousin's birthday party, except this pinata is the size of a T-Rex. So they did see a dinosaur shape. "Howdy, P-Rexes are friendly to smaller pinata monsters. Habitat, outdoors. They're way too big to come inside. Diet, they don't eat anything. That's because they're full of candy. Behavior, P-Rexes love smashing things. The bigger, the smashier. Warning, whack a P-Rex before it whacks you. Here's how. 1. Wear a blindfold and spin around 3 times. 2. Whack the P-Rex with a stick. 3. Watch it break open. Psst, sweet surprise inside." Alexander closed the notebook. Everything made sense now. The giant footprints, the pile of candy, the smashed buildings, even the paper stuck to his shoe. He couldn't wait to tell Rip and Nikki. Those are all of his thoughts. Chapter 9, Battle Plans. Alexander raced through the woods bright and early the next morning. He came to an old caboose, the SSMP headquarters. He rushed inside. Nikki was studying a map of Stermont. Rip was eating a peanut butter cup. "Rip, gross. Did you find that on the ground too?" Rip nodded. "Yep. Next to a flattened mailbox. I wouldn't eat that if I were you. The candy came from our latest monster," warned Alexander. Rip swallowed. "Say what?" Alexander whipped out the notebook. "Look, I found the monster last night. It's right here," he said. "It's a pinata monster." He showed the P-Rex pages to Rip and Nikki. "A pinata? Like the kind you break open at birthday parties?" said Nikki. "Yeah," said Alexander, "and this one wants to break things open all over Stermont." Rip poked the P-Rex drawing, leaving a chocolate smudge on its belly. "It sounds like this monster will be easy to beat. We tap it with a stick and pow. Sweet surprise time. We'll have a lifetime supply of candy. Look at him, that's what he's thinking about. But the P-Rex is enormous, said Nikki. How will we hit it without getting smashed? The notebook says the P-Rex is nice to little pinata monsters, said Rip. Too bad we don't know any, he snorted. Alexander clapped Rip on the back. That's it, he said. We can fool the P-Rex. We'll become a little pinata monster. Huh? Said Rip. Here, I'll show you, said Alexander. He flipped over the map of Stermont and started sketching on the back. Super secret battle burrow. A donkey-shaped pinata suit. Good for getting close to P-Rex. Weapon system. Rake handle, yardsticks, bandanas. Colorful paper shell. Captain, Alexander. He's gonna steer. First mate, Nikki, back support. So she's gonna hold up the back with a stick. Anchor, Rip, bringing up the rear. So he's gonna be the butt. Great plan, Salamander, said Nikki. She pulled out a box of art supplies. It's burrow building time. Chapter 10, Follow the Leader. The rainbow-colored paper battle burrow wobbled it to its feet. Seconds later, the three voices inside began to argue. Do you really think this costume will fool the P-Rex? Asked Nikki. Yes, definitely, said Alexander. Probably. We'll see. You mean you'll see, said Rip. We're totally blind back here. If it makes you feel better, said Alexander, I can barely see through these nose holes. That does not make us feel better, said Nikki. They did a really good job. The battle burrow stomped through the woods. It was awkward at first, but after a few stumbles, Alexander, Rip, and Nikki began marching as one six-legged donkey. Are they there yet? Are we there yet? Said Rip. Not far now, said Alexander. We're almost out of the woods. Here comes a sidewalk. Okay, now turn left. Now! The battle burrow made a wide left turn and somehow didn't fall over. So if the notebook is right, said Nikki, we just pull up the P-Rex, spin around 3 times, and whack it? Exactly, said Alexander. Oops, bird by the head, swing right. But how will we find the P-Rex? Asked Rip. Alexander put on the brakes, causing Rip and Nikki to bonk heads. Ugh, that should be easy. Through the battle burrow's 2 nose holes, Alexander could see a path of smashed trees, broken fences, and tilted lampposts. The path was swamped with P-Rex tracks and led straight to Stermont Elementary. So that's all I can see through the nose holes. Chapter 11, Don't Lose Your Head. Grrr! That sounds loud and close, Nikki whispered from the belly of the battle burrow. Alexander squinted through the costume's peepholes. We're here, he said. They stood at the school parking lot. It was empty except for one school bus. Behind the bus, Alexander could see the long crack running down Stermont Elementary. He turned his shoulders, craning the burrow's neck around. He could see a mound of shaggy, colorful stuff. What do you see? Asked asked Rip. It looks like a big leaf pile, said Alexander. He gasped. It wasn't a pile of leaves. It was the monster's foot. Guys, he whispered, we found the P-Rex. Alexander tilted the burrow's head back to get a better look. The P-Rex was covered in colorful strips of paper. It also had tiny arms, a long tail, and teeth the size of tombstones. Boom, boom. The P-Rex took 2 giant steps away. Alexander felt the ground shake with each step. I don't think it saw us, whispered Alexander. What's it doing? Asked Rip. I think it's playing, said Alexander. The P-Rex picked up the empty school bus and pushed it around like a toy. Said Alexander. Let's make our move now, while it's distracted. He lowered the battle burrow's neck into charge position. Ready? The burrow's head bobbled as it tiptoed toward the P-Rex. Attack now? Asked Nikki. Not yet. We need to get a little closer. Crunch. Alexander stepped on a cracked candy bar. The P-Rex looked up, growling. It squeezed the bus in its claw. The stop sign popped out. Guys, Alexander shouted, it sees us. The friends froze. There we go. The P-Rex tossed the bus aside and stomped over to the battle burrow. It leaned down, sniffing the burrow's head. The monster's snout blocked Alexander's peepholes. The inside of the costume went dark. Alexander tugged a string in the battle burrow's jaw, and the battle burrow smiled. The P-Rex smiled back. "Looks like our plan worked," Alexander whispered. "The P-Rex thinks we're a little piñata monster." "Yes," Nikki whispered. "Ha ha!" Rip shouted. "What a dummy!" The P-Rex stopped smiling. "Rip," said Alexander, "I think it heard." Glomp. The P-Rex stomped its jaws, clamped its jaws around the battle burrow, and ripped its head off. Chapter 12. Blindside. The P-Rex looked confused by the strange creature at its feet. It had the body of a colorful piñata and the head of Alexander Bopp. Howdy," said Alexander. He gave a little wave. The monster roared, firing pieces of candy from its mouth. Groar! Alexander's cheeks stung as he got hit with flying jelly beans. The P-Rex raised his high foot above what was left of the battle burrow, ready to stomp. "Attack!" Alexander shouted to his friends. Alexander, Rip, and Nikki tore out of the costume. They rolled on the side just as the P-Rex foot came crashing down. "Blindfolds on!" Alexander shouted. Rip and Nikki pulled the bandanas down over their eyes. They each spun around 3 times. Then they ran in different directions, swinging their sticks like battle axes. Alexander circled the P-Rex, shouting orders to its blindfolded friends. "Rip, swing left. Right. Nikki, duck." The P-Rex didn't know whom to chase. It spun around, nearly swiping Nikki with its heavy tail. Whiffed. Rip took a swing and missed. "Guys," Alexander yelled, "just come." Oof. The P-Rex snatched up Alexander. What do we think is gonna happen? "Salamander," called Rip. "Grrr!" Alexander cried out as the P-Rex squeezed him in its claws. The monster lifted him up to its open mouth. The P-Rex's breath smelled like the inside of a trick-or-treat bag. Mint and peanut butter and sour grape and chocolate. Rip yanked off his blindfold. He ran over to the P-Rex and began punching its pinky toe. Ploof! Alexander kicked the monster in its snout. Colorful bits of paper flacked off its nose. The P-Rex looked back at him, frowning. Alexander shouted down to Rip. "This big old monster really is just made of paper. He can shred it. Go get Nikki." Rip found Nikki. She was still blindfolded, attacking a trash can. He led her back to the P-Rex. The monster leaned down, about to grab Rip. "Hit it now, Nikki, now!" Alexander shouted. Nikki gritted her fangs and swung her rake handled hard. Whack! The end of her stick connected with P-Rex's belly. Then Alexander went flying through the air. Drink break. Chapter 13. Kerplooey. Alexander rolled to the ground. He was shaken but not hurt. A billion pieces of paper rained down from the sky. Nikki tore off her blindfold. "Where's the P-Rex?" she asked. "I can't see through all this paper." "The paper is the P-Rex," said Alexander. "You busted it." "Salamander," said Rip. "Let's invite a P-Rex to your birthday party next leap year. We can." Suddenly, Rip froze. "Wait, where's all the candy?" he asked. "The notebook said we'd have a sweet surprise." The falling confetti was starting to thin out. Rip, I found the candy." "Oh, God. Oh, good," said Rip, standing up. "Where?" A monstrous skeleton made entirely of candy was standing where the P-Rex had been. It had sharp candy cane claws, glowing fireball eyes, jagged peanut butter brittle teeth. "The P-Rex's skeleton?" yelled Alexander. Rip's eyes doubled in size. "It looks like a Candysaurus." "Oh, cool." Grar! The Candysaurus whipped its licorice tail at Nikki. At the end of the tail was a Jawbreaker, the size of a boulder. Nikki leaped away, just as the Jawbreaker crushed the upside-down school bus. Smash! "Run! Its tail is stuck in the bus," said Rip. Alexander, Rip, and Nikki darted across the parking lot. The pavement was blackened with shredded paper and chunks of candy. They crouched down behind a bike rack. Yikes, said Alexander. This is the biggest monster we've ever. Splunk. He was interrupted by the sound of a falling school bus. Chapter 14, Playtime. Alexander peeked over the bike rack. The school bus had been smashed into the playground, but the monster was nowhere to be seen. Where did it go? Asked Rip. The monster took one look at you and ran, said Nicky. I'm sure the enormous Candysaurus wants to smash bigger things than us, said Alexander. Things like Kraboom! The ground shook hard enough to rattle Alexander's bones. The Candysaurus must be behind the building, yelled Nicky. Kaboom! The crack in Stermont Elementary grew a little larger. Come on, said Alexander. We can't let this monster flatten our school. They rushed around to the back of the building. The Candysaurus was near the playground. It bared its teeth as it pounded the school with its jawbreaker tail. Look at those claws and that smashy tail, said Nicky. It is scary looking, but it's kind of slow. Alexander turned to his friends. We can bring this thing down. Follow my lead. He sprinted across the playground and raced up the slide. Hey, Fossil Face, quit smashing our school. Grrr! The Candysaurus stomped towards the slide. It lunged at Alexander. Snap. Alexander dodged its bite. He zipped down the slide, kicking the monster in the knee. Crunk. A hunk of hard candy flew off its kneecap. The monster took a step back. Rip pumped his fist. Take that, toffee brain, he yelled, and Rip jumped down the seesaw. The opposite end flew up and pow, socked the monster in the jaw. The Candysaurus fireball's eyes rolled in their sockets, but the monster picked Rip up and pinned him against the tetherball pole. It smashed the tetherball with its tail. Whack! The ball twirled on its cord, binding Rip in place. Leave me alone! Leave him alone! Yelled Nicky. She sailed high on the swing set, kicking the Candysaurus right in its peanut brittle mouth. Crunch! Grrr! The monster turned to Nicky, took a deep breath, and blap! Shot a stream of purple taffy from its nose. Ew! Nicky tried to run, but the goo hardened around her legs, fixing her to the 4-square court. Alexander looked to Nicky, then to Rip. Both of her friends were trapped. The Candysaurus leaped onto the merry-go-round. It slowly spun around, keeping its glowing red eyes locked on Alexander. Chapter 15. Stomp, Chomp, and Roll. Careful, Salamander, cried Rip, tied to the tetherball pole. Keep away from its tail, shouted Nicky, glued to the blacktop. Okay, said Alexander. He zigzagged through the playground. The Candysaurus snapped its heels, smashing through the playground equipment. Alexander wriggled into the jungle gym. The Candysaurus reached in with its sharp claws. Oh no, Salamander's trapped, said Nicky. I can't watch this, said Rip. Where's my blindfold when I need it? Look at all those. Alexander looked through the inside of the metal dome. Everything on the playground was wrecked except for Antville. Candy cane claws my foot is asleep. Candy cane claws grabbed at Alexander through the bars. Then the monster stuck out its gummy tongue. He has a red gummy tongue, thought Alexander, just like the gummies I brought for lunch. Alexander looked at Mr. Pluckett's giant ant farm. Ants love the sweet stuff. I've got an idea, he called to Rip and Nicky. Watch out, cried Nicky. Grrr! The Candysaurus raised its foot above the jungle gym. Alexander scrambled out from between the bars just as clink, the monster flattened the jungle gym. Alexander sprinted between the Candysaurus's legs. He skidded to a halt near Antville. Run, Salamander, shouted Nicky. Alexander planted his feet. What are you doing? Yelled Rip. Keep moving. Alexander looked into the monster's fiery red eyes. Take your shot. Take your best shot, monster. Hurrah! The Candysaurus's roar sounded like a laugh, and then it swung its wrecking ball tail at Alexander. Whoosh! Alexander ducked, and he could feel the rush of wind as the Jawbreaker shot over his head. Whack! The monster's heavy tail slammed into Antville. Oh. The giant ant farm exploded. The playground was covered with sand and wood, and of course, ants. Chapter 16, Feeling Antsy. A gazillion ants streamed out of Mr. Plunkett's broken ant farm. Grrr! The Candysaurus picked up one foot, then the other, as soon it was doing a little dance. Within seconds, the candy monster was up to its gumdrops in ants. The Candysaurus roared one last time before it completely covered in hungry ants. There we go. Alexander untied Rip from the tetherball pole. Thousands of ants chomped away at the taffy that was holding Nikki down. She ran over to Alexander and Rip. Guys, look, Alexander said. The Candysaurus was gone. The ants had eaten the entire monster, from the tail to the snout. All that was left was a single sour ball. I wonder why the ants didn't eat that, said Nikki. Rip picked it up, brushed it off, and glomp. Popped the sour ball into his mouth. Alexander and Nikki stared at him. What? Candy is candy. Alexander and Nikki looked at Rip again. He swallowed. What? He said. So it came from a monster. No big deal. I guess we'll find out, said Alexander. He took the notebook from his backpack and, You three, shouted a voice. Mrs. Vanderpants came storming across the playground. Explain yourselves, she said. We didn't do this, said Alexander. At least not all of it. Mrs. Vanderpants frowned. I know you didn't do this, but you shouldn't be on school grounds on a Saturday. We're dealing with a major, she glanced at the crack in the building, pest problem. Sorry, Mrs. Vanderpants, said Alexander. He turned to his friends. We were just leaving. They got out of there. Pest problem, said Nikki. What was that about? And besides, she should be thanking us. We saved the school. Totally, said Rip. The SSMP bashed the mighty P-Rex and licked the Candysaurus. Yeah, said Alexander. It was pretty sweet. He grabbed his pencil and made a new entry. So this is your Candysaurus. Candysaurus, a giant dino skeleton made of candy. Habitat inside a P-Rex. Boogie, Candysaurus danced when covered in ants. Diet, it doesn't eat much, but candy flies out of its mouth when it roars. Behavior, smashy smashy. Warning, either end is trouble. Taffy blasting nose, Jawbreaker tail. Thank you for reading The Notebook of Doom, Whack of the P-Rex with me. And this is a little bit about the author. Troy Cummings has no tail, no wings, no fangs, no claws, and only one head. As a kid, he believed that monsters might really exist. Today, he's sure of it. Behavior. This creature likes losing to his kids at board games. Habitat. Troy Cummings lives in Indiana, a state that's shaped like a monster. Diet. Prunes. Squishy, slimy, wrinkly prunes. Yum. Evidence. A few people that believe that Troy Cummings is real. The only proof we have is that he suddenly wrote and illustrated The Eensy Weensy Spider Freaks Out and Giddy Up, Daddy. Warning. Keep your eyes peeled for more danger in the Notebook of Doom number 6. Pop of the Bumpy Mummy. I like this book. It was really cute. So thank you for reading The Notebook of Doom, Whack of the P-Rex by Troy Cummings with me.